Hello everyone, thanks for joining me today on this video, and I thought I'll begin this series of tutorials that go through the categories of geometry and explain step by step how they work and relate to each other, so that you could begin understanding how to build things with BitByBit. And I will just drop this grid mesh real quick so we see some framework for us. And this video will just deal with points, and I'll be making other videos that will just go and analyze the lines, polylines, curves, and surfaces, of course. Later on we will move on to some different concepts like transformations and vectors, but to keep this video simple, I want to discuss the points basically. So if we open this panel and you see that this is a sort of standard in BitByBit, that when you open the category, you first see the components that allow you to draw the entities of that category. The draw components are, well, they usually serve the purpose of visualization and not creation of the data entity itself. And if you want to draw the point, you're welcome. So you can use this component to draw it. You can choose the color here, the size of the point, the opacity, and this updatable property means that, well, if you're running the render loop and the point will be updated in time, for example, so it will be moving, then you will want to set that to true. But standard is false, and that's what you should keep if you're just doing a static geometry creation. And so this point component, drawing of the point component, asks you to create the point itself. And how BitByBit handles the drawing is that it also assigns the point that is visualized into this point mesh component. So you could keep track of it and update if needed. That's a bit more complicated concept, I guess. I will have to explain that in more detail later on, how that works, especially when we will be dealing with rendering loops. But just to go and create the point now on the line, you saw that what I did is, so first of all, I opened the point category, then I clicked create, and this is a sort of subcategory of the point, and it allows me to create points in various methods. But usually what we will be using is this, so it's a point with 3 coordinates of x, y, and z. In BitByBit, y means upward, and z is not upward as usual, as is in some other software packages or CAD packages. But for our needs and purposes, it's quite clear, I think. And then you see this pattern in all of the categories, by the way. So we always have this create and apply subcategory on geometry entities. And what that means is that we use create to create the point or points in this case. And if we want to get some information of the point, or we want to transform the point somehow, manipulate that, then we use this apply subcategory. And you will see this also in other categories as well. But basically, so you will see that, okay, so if we create the point somehow, and we want to read its x coordinate and print it out, for example, well, that's possible through this x coordinate category component, sorry. So that's the basic idea between this create and apply subcategories. And let's move on and let's run the script that we have now and see what happens. So if I run it, you see that I've just created a small point in the center. Let's make its size a bit bigger so you could see it better. Yes, so now it's there in the center. And if we just swap the canvas, we can rotate, and we see that it's indeed in the center of our space. And now you can begin playing with the coordinates, of course, to understand which axis is which. And if I just do xy and x1, then it moves to that direction. If I'm saying that y is 3, then the point will move upwards by 3 units. Bit by bit, by the way, is sort of it's not metric, it's not it doesn't have a real unit. It's just you can figure out your own unit and just say if in your application 1 is 1 meter, well, then it's fine, but you have to keep track yourself of what that is. So if you're saying that 1 is a centimeter, or for bit by bit, it's fine, it's no big deal. And z, yeah, of course, it can be also negative. So -4, then the point will go somewhere else, and well, we see that it's not anymore in the center of the space, but still I suppose it's easy to understand how that works. So x, y, and z, they describe the coordinates of the point, and then we draw it, and that's it. So this is a simple case of the point. Now we also have ways to create multiple points, and if that happens, you have to also use a special drawing component for multiple points. You do that because it's much more efficient sorry for that. It's much more efficient to draw many points in one go with this component, rather than iterating through all the points and then using this to draw each and every one of them, because every time you will do that, it will create a new mesh, and that's not really efficient. So every time you have multiple points, be certain to use draw points mesh with points component, and not draw point with point. That's just gonna save you a lot of frustration, and performance will be much better, so keep that in mind. And to demonstrate that, so in the future, of course, there will be more ways to create points, but now we have also this standard spiral component here, which we could use to drop here and draw those points that are created by bit in the spiral. And this just demonstrates you real quick how easy it is, and what bit by bit will give you in the future. It will give you a lot of nice and easy to use components that will be able to create the points, curves, and lines in ways that are algorithmically extendable. So that's just a small example of how the spiral was abstracted, and then we just said, okay, we want to draw all those points, because spiral is consisting of many points, they are in the good order. We can manipulate the radius to be smaller or larger. We can create more or less points here, like so we can increase the number to 400, for example. You see then the density of the spiral just increased. That's how easy it is and will be to manipulate all those entities in bit by bit. But today we're discussing points, and while there are still no support for point clouds, it will be coming quite soon, I hope. But here you see that I used another component from this category that is meant to draw the points, and this is a way to also efficiently draw points. Again, these inputs are also available, and when you, for example, have multiple points that are rendered in the update loop, you will want to make these updatable, and I will provide you with examples for that. But yeah, so for now, I hope you understood the principle. So what we've discussed now is how we could create one point, how we can create multiple points. but we didn't yet tried to read the data through this apply category. And I think it's nice if we can just use few things here. For example, I will create the point and then I will read its Z coordinate to print it out on the screen. It's not a complicated script, but it will give you an idea how these apply categories can be used and how, what's the purpose of them are. What is the purpose? So let's see. I will delete this one. I will create a new point like that. I will say that the y is 2 and that the z is -4. And then I will say that I want to print this out. So that's it. So if all is good, I should get this -4 as an output, and that's what I get in this case. So that's also so the spiral went away because that component doesn't exist anymore. But this is the idea of the apply category, that you take point or points and you manipulate them to get the part of the information about it, or transform that point in some way. So you act on them or apply methods on them. So the creation itself makes that object, and then applying of methods manipulates it, reads the data inside, and so forth. So that's how you should think about those categories, and I hope they are not too frustrating, but they are indeed needed because you sometimes have many ways to create curves, for example, and you may also want to have even more subcategories, like here for circle. And then application also is really, you see how many methods you can use on the curves, and circles have, for example, radius, so you want to read the radius. We moved a little to the curve, but just to explain this pattern between create and apply subcategories. So the points are the building blocks in BitByBit of many other geometry types. When you begin thinking about the polylines or lines, they all use points to create the entities, and it's good to understand this concept of the point itself and how it can be created with BitByBit, and the coordinates of x, y, z are crucial for that. I want to just give a brief example of how you can create a sort of grid of points, for example, if you want. So basically, and that also will explain a bit the iteration loops of and how they can be used. So if I use this loop component, I have this possibility to have a count iteration that goes from, let's say, 0 to 10 at a step of 1. So every iteration loop will increase this y variable by 1, and in this way we can say that we will be also creating a list that we will assign to the variable. So here we go, we have these points, and we will set the points first to the empty list. You will see in a moment what I'm doing. So first we initiate the points to the empty list, then we create this iteration loop that goes from 0 to 10 by 1, and then what we can do is say let's add every time we're in this loop, let's add the point to the list. And this can be done, I think, with this one, with this component. So we will say in list points, insert at last. So insert at the last position of this list a point which has a coordinate of x0, and then I'll do my trick with the variable. I'll take this and I'll use that on the y coordinate. And if you read this code, it may not be intuitive immediately of what it will do, but if we just draw out the result, so because now we created the list of points, we can use this draw points component, and we can say to this draw points component that we want to draw the points variable that we've just filled with points in the iteration loop, and see what the result is. So let's try it out. We can also, for clarity's sake, just set the z to also 0. So only y coordinate is now varying. And let's play the script. Okay, so you see what happened. So I've iterated from 0 to 10 by 1. And every time I iterated, I hit this component and I was adding points 10 times into this points list. And then I just said, just draw all those points that I've created. And voila, you see that now I have 10 points going from 0 to 10 at the step of 1. And that's really how BitByBit allows you to explain and understand the iteration loops really fast, because you see the results immediately. And to make it even more fun, I will make it a bit more complicated. So I'll do the iteration loop in the iteration loop, and you'll see what happens then. If I, of course, for that, I will have to create a new variable, and I will call it j, for example. And I'll say that in the second iteration loop, I'm going from 0 to 20 at a step of 1, or let's do even nice or more interesting at the step of 0.5, and let's use that j variable now on the z coordinate. And with this, you can see that now I've just created a grid that is vertical, and that has this like from 10 points going upwards, and then 40 points going to that side, because we said that we want to go from 0 to 20 at 0.5. That creates us 40 points, and that's how it works. And with this, you can begin also seeing the pattern that so you could say, yeah, I want to go I want to create the grid that is planar, and this is then also the possibility to do that. So y is then static, and you can say I want the grid to go up, or I want the grid to go down to 0. That's all possible, and that's easy to do. And you also immediately recognize how the iteration loops affect your visual result. And with this, I think I'm sort of finishing up on this idea about the points. It's very important to realize how the lists work in BitByBit, so you can always be able to create these collections in various ways, and then draw them, of course. It's not very complicated, but you must learn to keep track of the variables, and if you haven't yet listened to the introduction to variables, please do so. The video is on YouTube, just Google it up. In BitByBit channel you will find it, and that's how the idea in this video of the variable is that we've created a sort of container that holds all the points that we want to draw later on. And with that, I conclude. Thanks a lot for watching this. I will be making more videos about the geometry categories, as I've said in the beginning of this video, and I hope to see you in those videos. Thanks. Bye.